what's about to go down. But something really awesome on the Pastors of Pain is about to happen today.
It's going down for real, as they say.
Well, you've tuned. I can never get that word right. You've turned your dial and tuned in to the greatest radio station in Stillwater, Oklahoma, Pete FM, and also the Miracle Half Hour. The Pastors of Pain. 29 minutes and 28 seconds of pure, beautiful Catholicism spewing forth from the mouths of your pastors of Payne County. I'm the pastor of St. John Catholic Student Center, currently a square concrete hole in the ground at the corner of Miller and Knobloch next to Boone Pickens Stadium. Soon and very soon. Don't like that song. We are going to have a new church, so keep praying for us. Pray for us as right on the road, raising money. And we still got to raise a few bucks to put some stuff into this thing to get it going. And I'm here with my amigo, the rectory. Whoa, that is my cell phone ringing in the background. My rectory homeboy, Father Brian.
Just gonna see how long you can talk.
I can keep going. I just circular breathing through the nose and out the mouth. And we're here to bring you some really good Catholic stuff.
Why'd your voice just get really high?
Because it's called an octave change. For some reason, I thought about myself being like 13 years old talking, and then I reverted back.
Lovely.
I know. You're welcome.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody. We hope your January is going well. 2022 off to a good start. Usually, this is the time of year where we start talking about Lent, but Lent is so late this year, guys.
When is it?
March 2nd is Ash Wednesday.
Whoa.
Yeah, way late.
March? And then when is Easter Sunday?
Easter's mid-April.
Oh, yeah.
Mid-April.
Yeah, we looked at doing our Mystagogy.
I think it's like the latest it can possibly be. It's really late. April. I mean,
we were trying to do our Mystagogy, really, and it's like we had 1 week of Mystagogy, and the church has to do 4.
School's out.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Hey, let's get rolling on this.
Let's get right to the point.
Let's start at the very beginning.
So we've had this show for a while now, and we talk about all kinds of Catholic things. Just last week we talked about marriage and living together before you're married. The week before that we talked about our 2022. We've done Christmas. We talk about the life of priests. And I think what we hear from people is that people say hey guys, hey, thanks for making the church a little more accessible. Thanks for talking about this particular topic that I wanted to know more about. Thanks for, that you can be joyful and be a Catholic.
Oh, I can? Oh, it is a fruit of the Holy Spirit.
And so there's a lot of that. But I also think, we've talked over the years about difficult things within the church, kind of difficult teachings, but also failures within the church. So the summer of 2018, the stuff with Ted McCarrick and sexual abuse in the church. And
St. Peter denying Jesus.
Yeah. So we don't want to. We want this to be not just sort of a fluff, show, as it mostly is when I'm not here.
Whoa! Shots fired.
Just kidding, of course. So I thought it might be interesting to talk about what's not attractive about Catholicism. Not what's wrong with Catholicism. What is either repelling people away from the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, or is a barrier to entry.
Okay.
But what's not attractive? So on my Twitter.
What's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is at Fr O'Brien.
Really?
Yeah. At Father O'Brien. So on my Twitter handle, one morning, I just put out there, hey, recording a podcast, what's not attractive about Catholicism? And you never know. You never know when you put something out there on Twitter.
Because it keeps just going and people retweet it.
Yes. And then like arguments, someone will say, well, this, and then someone will say, no. And then now it's like those two people are having a fight while I'm just standing there watching the whole thing. But some very interesting responses came back that I think are worth addressing. Would you like to hear some of them?
Drum roll, please.
Okay, so here we go. Okay,
is this live from Twitter?
So this is off the Twitters.
Okay.
What's not attractive about Catholicism? The rules.
The rules.
So this person said, well, once you live it, it's easy to see the beauty of chastity and purity. When you're just approaching from the outside, the call can seem impossible or at the very least daunting.
Oh, so they're showing up and they're like, the church asked me to be chaste.
Or just, a lot of things. That's something that the church is known for, of like that. Oh, yeah, Catholicism, yeah.
Sex rules.
They got a lot of rules. And a lot of those rules around sexuality, yeah. But man, it's like so, and almost like, and I think what's not attractive is that it's like rule oriented. Like, you go somewhere like where you want it to be like fun and interesting, and then there's like, here, sign this waiver. And you're just like, oh my gosh, am I gonna die doing this activity? What do you think about that? Is that true? Is that unattractive?
Yeah, when someone looks at it and says, wow, the culture or my friends are telling me A, B, C, and D, and alone or with others.
This other thing, yeah.
Alone or with others.
Yep.
And then the church says, are you married or in a sacramental bond? And the answer is no. And it's like, okay, you're supposed to leave these things for marriage.
Yep.
Whether they're alone or with others.
Yep. Yep.
And so that can be a collision.
But then there's also, I think, people, there's rules around kind of fasting. There's rules around, what we can eat. Yeah, what we can eat and when we have to go to church and not.
Oh, yeah, you got to go on Christmas just like this past year, and you have to go on the Holy Family.
You have holy days of obligation, and you have to, But I think there's also, several people wrote about, it seems like whether for marriage or receiving the sacraments, sometimes there can be kind of hoops to jump through.
Oh, like you got to be in the state of grace to receive Holy Communion. True.
Or like, okay, to be married, you have to go to this retreat, and you have to and we need this your certificate, and so there's this. I think for most people that's not attractive.
Yeah.
Like people don't actively seek out stuff where there's a lot of layers and a lot of hoops. I think that's a fair point. Now we would say all of that has purpose.
Yeah.
When you really understand what the hoops are about, when you really understand kind of why we do marriage preparation, why we do preparation for baptism or first communion or confirmation, or all of that has really good reasons behind it. But from the outside looking in, you would say, oh man,
oh my gosh,
I have to go to a class? Ugh.
Building this building? There's lots of rules. And I got annoyed the other day because they're like, well, this electrical panel actually has to be 6 feet. A person has to be able to step back 6 feet and not touch another electrical panel. I'm like, so we have to build a whole nother room? So we spent like $20,000 building an extra room, all because there's the electrical code so the building doesn't blow up or somebody gets incinerated by backing in randomly.
Yep.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
Now, and the builder would say, or the city council would say, I know that doesn't look attractive, but here's
it's a human being's life.
But here's why. Yeah, here's why. You're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. You're going to save yourself a funeral.
Yeah, and the guilt.
We know
we have to do this because someone got killed.
Even if you don't want to, like, okay, we know we have to do it.
It's like when you get in a small airplane and they hand you the checklist and you're like, carburetor heater on, and you're like, why are we doing this? Like, well, that cost somebody their life.
All right, unattractive things about Catholicism. Not true across the board, but the preaching and the music.
Oh, yeah. What was that Flannery O'Connor line? She took her Baptist friend to a Catholic church, the American writer, and the girl said, like, that was the worst thing that has ever happened. And she had this thought, like, wow, the preaching was terrible. We were there for the Eucharist. And the preaching can be really terrible.
Yeah. So that can be unattractive. You show up to the church, you're wanting to be fed, you're wanting to be inspired. People come, you want to be challenged, whatever. Or you want to be entertained. I mean, people come for all kinds of reasons, and they find preaching or music, or even, other people kind of wrote, there's what's unattractive is like the lack of reverence at times in certain parishes or in certain places. Like that's unattractive to them.
Yeah, like the preaching one time I had the extreme conversations. A student said, I went to my home parish and the priest started off with, and this was just a few years ago, and I was reading a Snoopy cartoon or Peanuts, and they're like, what?
No.
What, Father? What's Peanuts? I've never heard of this.
They didn't even know what that was.
They didn't even know what it was. Oh. And the other side was they went to Mass, a Tridentine liturgy, and the priest began his homily with like what's going on this week in the church, and then started his homily.
Oh.
And they didn't know that the homily is not part of the liturgy. So when you take your
Maniple.
You take your maniple off, you actually stop the liturgy, then you preach your homily, and then you go back. So the homily, and they're just totally confused.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody wrote, what is unattractive about the Catholic Church are priests.
You mean because I don't have a nice haircut? Like I got a bad smile? I'm not handsome enough? Is that unattractive? Because I think I'm a pretty handsome guy.
I think there was just sort of their experience has been less than stellar. I don't know.
Oh, and okay. So there are. I mean, there's some dillweeds out there, and I guess maybe sometimes I are too. Right?
Is that a theological term?
Dillweeds. Yes, that's not only in your spice rack, but also sometimes in your parishes as your pastor. Yeah, there's some. Like I've had interactions with priests, and they were cruel.
Yeah.
Like on one occasion,
priest can definitely be a barrier.
He said, if it doesn't, listen here, Kerry. If it's not about church or prayer, don't bother me. I was like,
oh,
whoa, come on.
What about sports?
Come on, Jack Beanstalk. Well,
what about this good book I read?
Oh yeah, I mean, in that list is probably like the sexual abuse crisis in the church that went around to the minority of priests, but really affected the majority of the culture of the church around the world.
Yeah.
Priests, makes something very.
So I think generally speaking, we could say sort of the kind of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Priests, I think people have in their minds, and they should, like that priests ought to be this. Now, I hope nobody has their expectation of priests as perfection or priests as sort of, super saintly. But you ought to have a high expectation of your priests. And when that's not met, either out of our lack of charity, bad preaching, bad leadership, poor decisions, to the extreme of, sort of abuse and covering it up, and that is unattractive.
And what it tells me about the people is that they have this idea in their minds that priests are supposed to be holy. Sometimes they're like, priests are not supposed to have a bad day. And it's like, maybe I was in the hospital the previous night, but there is this, I was at the hospital and you showed up and I was just not nice to you that day. And you know what?
Yeah, think of all the reasons you've ever been in a bad mood. That also happens to priests.
4 or 5 times a day.
You're in a bad mood 4 times a day?
It can be. So on behalf of priests everywhere, please forgive us.
I was in a bad mood the other night when we didn't have any bread at our house.
Dude, you were cranky crank.
I was.
And you said, we don't have anything to eat. And I said, I think we have different
opinions.
And you walked out of the kitchen.
Because I wanted a sandwich.
Okay, I'm gonna take care of you, Papa Bear.
We didn't have any bread.
I know, but
why wasn't there any bread?
It stinks, and so please forgive us.
All right.
But there's this expectation that we should be holy, that we should be saints, and the people see it. Both non-Christians and Christians,
yeah,
atheists and agnostics know that a dude who has a collar around his neck should be striving for, running after sainthood.
Yes. Okay, unattractive about Catholicism, the annulment process.
Oh, my. Pope Francis has done, I think, a great job of simplifying.
Trying to simplify it.
Yeah, I had to do a couple of
But it's a barrier. It's a barrier when people want to look at a marriage and perhaps have it declared as invalid or annulled,
or have you go through the weeds.
But it's a process, and I think that's where it's sort of seen as bureaucratic. It's seen as hoop jumping. You know,
if you see it, maybe a different way to see it is to see it as a journey of healing.
And yes, and so I think that's where a lot of these things, like, why do I have to go to a class to be a godparent? We're not hoop jumping. We take godparenting seriously.
Yeah. Well,
the annulment process is not hoop jumping. We take marriage, we hold marriage in very high esteem. Okay, somebody wrote, what's unattractive is what the kind of seeming disconnect between the Catholic Church and the LGBT community. There's a lack of what looks to be a lack of acceptance and love for our gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender
friends,
and questioning brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Well, I would. There is.
There definitely. There definitely is. Can be, not always, but there's a disconnect there. That where it looks like. I think what is unattractive about Catholicism is what is and what is perceived as a judgmentalism,
right,
of a whole whole groups of people, and I think one of them is our LGBT friends, but then also couples living together, someone who hasn't been to church in a long time, somebody who just believes differently, that sometimes they come to the church and what the church gives off is lukewarmness, lack of love, rejection, judgment.
Right. I when I have like tabling on campus and I see LGBTQ tables, I go talk to people.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, let's dialogue for once. Instead of basically doing what happens, I think, on Twitter. I don't use Twitter, but people just basically, as Pope Francis says, you go into a room and you lob a hand grenade and then you run out.
Yeah.
Or there's a perception that this person doesn't like me. And at the heart of this Christian life is I'm supposed to treat everybody as my brothers and sisters. Because as we remember, this is what we are. If we're not brothers and sisters, then what are we?
Yep.
And we can't treat each other like that. So I would say give the church a chance.
Well, but then those of us in the church and leaders in the church, you and me, right? Mm-hmm. What are we doing to
promote it?
Yeah, and to be more that the teachings of the church, including on the issue of homosexuality and on a lot of things, is good news. It's good news. Mm-hmm. But I think we don't do a good job. I'll speak for myself. I don't do a good job of always making that known. Mm-hmm. Where then I can or we can kind of come across in a way that says you're not
welcome.
You're not part of us. You're not welcome here. Okay. Somebody wrote. I said, so what's unattractive? And they said the church is basically too middle class.
Ooh.
I thought that was a really good one.
It's not rich and poor.
And I said, could you say more? Like what's specifically negative about that? They said the way many bishops and priests both talk and act means very little outside of the middle class. The bishops especially, from the average local ordinary all the way up to Rome, the language of the managerial class has been adopted. Whoa. How are we meant to evangelize laborers, plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, when the hierarchy doesn't even talk in a language they can understand, which I don't know, might be a little belittling to, like, electricians can be educated people.
I always think of Robert Williams' dad, who's a train conductor, who's the most
he's one of the most super smart. Yeah. So this person said, we talk in greater and greater abstractions to the point that it means nothing to the person on the street. We speak not to their concerns and the issues in their lives. We speak not to them, but to their bosses and their bosses' bosses, and to the people that won't even acknowledge their existence. So the church is, what's unattractive is the church is too middle class.
I found on one occasion that a CEO, it changed by his conversion. It changed the way he treated his employees.
Yep.
And so he started. He was in the business of buying companies, and his conversion to the gospel and greater love of God actually changed the way he treated his employees. So when he bought a new company, he started raising people's salaries and started buying like Christmas hams and turkeys, and people cried because they loved what he was doing and they'd never experienced it before. So I think the hope is we're preaching to middle class. The middle class, who are working with their employees and their teammates and those people who work above them and below them, being lights of the gospel.
Yeah.
Period.
Also,
I don't see a lot of like in America.
Well, here's what I was thinking. I was actually just having this conversation the other day with a staff member, and they were saying, somebody asked me like, so do you like, they know I'm not from here, right? I'm not from Stillwater. I'm not even from Oklahoma, right? Originally, but I love it. And they said like, do you like Stillwater? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, no. I mean, like really? I mean, I know you have to say that because you're here and you can't go anywhere. But like, do you really? And I was like, yes. And they said, well, what do you like so much about Stillwater? And so I went on and on. I mean, I have all kinds of like sort of seemingly superficial things. I like the people. I like OSU. I like, And I said, one of the things I really like specifically about being a priest in Stillwater, about being the pastor of the parish church in Stillwater, is that there are no other options. If you go to Tulsa or you go to Oklahoma City, there's options with churches. There's 80 churches in Stillwater, something like that, for 50,000 people. If you go to Tulsa, there's a lot of Catholic churches. And so what happens in Tulsa or in Oklahoma City is for a lot of people, they self-select into a parish. I want to go to this parish because there's other people there like me. For a lot of times, that's the rich.
Okay,
that's the parish where kind of, that sort of level of society is, or that school. And so they go there. It happens for a lot of our Spanish speakers, right? So we have this big parish called St. Thomas More in East Tulsa. It's huge. There's people from all over the city coming to St. Thomas More because it's a hip and happening place. St. Thomas More, St. Francis Xavier, St. Peter and Paul. If you're a Spanish speaker, you want to be there. Mm-hmm. In Stillwater, we're it. And so every Catholic, everyone who wants to be around the Catholic Church, who's not a student, comes to St. Francis Xavier. And so what does that mean? It means that the rich and poor and the middle class are together. It means English speakers and Spanish speakers are together under one roof. Mm-hmm. You can't self-select out. Now, if somebody wants to drive to Edmond or
Guthrie,
Tulsa, or you can, but people really aren't. So that is, I think it's unattractive that you can go to a parish just with people like you. I don't think that's what a parish is meant to be. I think a parish is meant to be a place where everybody can come. Anyway, that was just an interesting little thing that's one of the things I love about Stillwater is we got all kinds of people.
Right. There was a young couple who told me one time, they said, Father, do we go to our parish boundary church or do we go to a fun church with lots of young people? And they were 25 and 26 years old, newlyweds. And I said, well, what's going on at your church? And they said, nothing. It's sort of dead. It's like, blue collar. And it's like a, steel belt town. And they're like, go to Rust Belt town. And they're like, should we just go someplace else? And they came to the decision that they were going to be there and they were going to meet the people in their parish that were Rust Belt people. And they loved it. And they got some stuff going in their parish and they had their kids there.
Yeah.
And now the parish is starting sort of like just from their lighting a little fire and like getting to know their priest and re-inspiring
I would hope more people would do that, would kind of stay stay where they live, as opposed to, we went, we drive by 5 different parishes to get to the one with the really good young adult group. Now, I get why people do it. I really do. But I think what's unattractive about Catholicism can be that kind of self-selecting, that we have, a universal church, but within our parishes, they can be kind of homogenous.
We call them siloing.
Yeah, I really only want to be around people
that are white.
Or,
Yaris, young.
I want to be,
Yaris, young, attractive, rich, intellectual, and social.
Yeah.
I want to be around Yaris people.
And I think this individual who said that, I think that's what they're thinking. That they see that, I don't know them, but they see the church kind of becoming that.
Ooh.
We're too middle class, or we're too Yaris focused.
Okay.
So maybe not focused enough, as Pope Francis has called us, not focused enough on the poor, not a church going to the peripheries and, and kind of bringing people in.
Yeah. Give me something else.
What? You want more?
Oh yeah. We got about 3 or 4 minutes?
Okay, one of them said the Catholic Church is not convenient. That is unattractive. And that is that things in Catholicism they seem to take a long time. Like weddings. Why are your weddings so long? Which they're really not. I mean, I would say from the inside, from doing a lot of weddings, they're not that long, but they are longer than other churches.
I had a friend who was late for a wedding in their little small Baptist town, late for the wedding, pulled on the door and the bride and groom were coming out. They were late for the wedding by about 5 or 7 minutes, and it was over.
Oh.
So, I mean, we have the rituals.
Well, and I think too, this is kind of goes back to the rules, but we have a liturgical calendar that we follow. And that can lead to some inconvenient situations. We don't celebrate Christmas early. We celebrate Christmas on the evening of the 24th or the day of the 25th.
We actually celebrate Christmas shorter than the secular world does.
Well, yeah, but on Christmas.
No, I mean, the secular world celebrates Christmas for 6 weeks? They're prepared
from Halloween to
Halloween. They're selling stuff, and ours is from Christmas to the baptism of the Lord.
Yep.
Basta, done.
Yep.
And move on.
So that there's this that can be unattractive. Those Catholics take a long time to do. Well, I mean, even the annulment process, sacramental preparation,
Easter Vigil,
the Easter Vigil. Why?
Why do you need 3 hours? Why can't you do it in an hour?
Why can't we just baptize the people and get out of here? Why the 2 hours of
2 hour baptism of a baby?
No, just of the Easter Vigil.
Right.
Why does every song have to be
4 verses?
Right.
And I think there is the abridging of things, and you can do beautiful things. There may be those. Amen. And it just keeps, and you're like, is this going on?
So we would say, I think, same thing. Is what is that unattractive? Yes, but there's there's reasons for it. Even just the Mass. If you've never been to church ever, and you walk in off the street, and you come to a Sunday Mass at your parish or mine, it's not very accessible. Mm-hmm. You're not immediately aware of what's happening. It takes some catechesis. It takes some kind of coming a few times. So I think those are kind of barriers, if you will. When somebody's, hey, come to Mass with me. I know you've never been to church, but or you're used to a different kind of church. Hey, come to Mass with me.
A sermon and a rock band's easy to connect with.
People, and people come and are like, oh, I don't know, what was that? I don't even know. Oh, that was kind of embarrassing. I didn't know when to stand up, or
thanks for putting me in the front row and then leaving to go to the bathroom for 20 minutes.
So anyway, all that is said, we could go on and on. That's just a little look into what's unattractive about Catholicism, our little take on that.
Not just us.
Not just us. We are unattractive for sure. Okay, we'll see you next week. Have a great week. God bless you. We love you.
Peace.